All right, after 2 weeks off, Tim and I are back for show number 144 on May 5th. Hey, Tim.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Had a good 2 weeks off?
Yes, I did.
Me too, and I'm glad to be back at it. And, you know, I mentioned before we went on break for the 2 weeks that I was traveling for work. And the other thing I was doing, Tim, was for the first time I was talking in front of a live audience about photography. I've talked a little bit in front of a live audience for things related to my work, but never on photography. I've done just the podcast. So this is my first time talking in front of a live audience about photography. And it, you know, going back to the beginning of JPEG to RAW, even before you came on for show number 4, my original thought for the show, and even the namesake of the show, the meaning of JPEG to RAW, was about beginners. JPEG meaning the beginner, and then the RAW meaning, the more advanced user, and that JPEG to RAW is kind of the journey of a photographer. So the show was originally came into being because I wanted to help out those beginners. People that, when I ran into when I was doing sports photography with my son's teams, the moms and the dads who said, how do I, what does this little running man on here mean? What does this little flower mean on my camera? Those kind of things, helping those people out. I enjoyed helping them out. And I thought, hey, the podcast could be a way to do that. And it's morphed into more than that now. But this was a time for me to try that again. And what this was is at my work, every so often we have what we call lunch and learn. It's during the lunch hour. There's someone either from inside the company or generally from outside the company who comes in and teaches on or speaks about a particular subject. And we do them on an irregular basis. So at one point somebody said, hey, Mike, why don't you do one on photography? Do a photography 101 class. I said, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'd love to do that. So I knew the first week we took off, I took that off because I was traveling for work. The second week I took it off because I knew I would be focused on preparing for that class, because I have an issue where once I have something like that to do, I singularly focus on it. And I know I could not do both this show and that at the same time. It's part of the reason why we only have one podcast. I keep wanting to start a second one or maybe a third one, and I never can because I'm singularly
You will
focused.
never see a family if you did that.
Yeah, my wife's already fussed about that. And there's something's going to come up later about what I'm talking about now that she fussed about too. So anyway, in preparing for this, I was thinking, what should I teach to a class that is called Photography 101, that's going to have people who the only photography they're interested in is from their phone, and other people who they're interested, hey, I bought this new DSLR, help me out with it. So I'm going to have a wide range of people in this class. How do you teach for that? And knowing that I can't tell everybody, here's the settings you got to do here's what these settings do in your camera.
Right.
And it apply to everybody's camera, because one, you got cell phone people, point and shoot people, DSLR people of all different brands, makes and models. So what do you teach? So I came up with, I need to teach some basics. I need to teach the exposure triangle. That was one. Some basic composition. And white balance. And that was going to be my 3 things, and then a few tips.
Really, I don't know if I would have gotten into white balance. I think the first 2 definitely I would have, I agree with. But white balance.
Yeah, and looking back on it, so I told you in a pre-show I went a little crazy with this. And remember, it's an hour because these are people who got to go back to work, and half the room is people that work for me. So I need them to get back to work.
Otherwise, you get lots of questions and no work done.
Yeah, so... white balance was one that I thought about. And I had 80 slides for 60 minutes. And I thought, oh man, 80 slides. That's less than a slide a minute. I'm not going to get to spend any time on anything. And in hindsight, if I had to do it again, I might have deleted out the white balance and spent a little more time on exposure. I got people to understand a little bit about aperture. When you think about this, most of the people who listen to the show, aperture, the exposure triangle is second nature.
Right.
I don't need to explain to you, aperture, shutter speed, or ISO. But if you're coming into this not knowing anything, and all you know is I turn it on, it's already in auto, and I just press this button. Mm-hmm. And sometimes my shots are good, sometimes they're not, and I have no idea why. This camera just sometimes decides not to take good photos. if that's where you're coming from, then it's a little bit, you got to learn that. If you remember when you were first learning that stuff, some of you it may come easy to you. Others you may have struggled with. So why does it do that when I do this? And, how come when I change the aperture, it makes the thing get darker or lighter, but, the shutter speed's still the same. And, all those things, it takes a little bit for them to understand. And, if I slow down the shutter speed, will that let more light in or less light? So it's some one of those things that once it clicks and you go, well, if the shutter's open longer, there's more time for light to hit it. So it's going to be brighter, and then once that clicks, you go, oh, yeah, okay. But it was nice, working people through that. And then we talked a little bit about rule of thirds. And what was funny with the rule of thirds was most of the room had heard of something like that before.
But I had no clue what it meant.
Yeah. And I said, and I had examples of all this stuff. And one of the things I learned is that I think, they asked in the Facebook group, hey, you're going to make your presentation public. And no, I can't, because this was a nonprofit, non-paid, isolated group that was looking at this. And not all the work was mine. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So that you don't want to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I can't be showing this stuff anywhere else. But it did make me think I've got to develop some of this material myself so that I can. Some of it is me taking photos. It's nice to see a photo, if you're talking about the rule of thirds, of the same person in the same setting of, here's a shot with them dead center, here's a shot with them in the rule of thirds, here's a shot with them looking off to the wrong side, and some examples. I've never taken those kind of example shots. And it would be helpful to do those kind of example shots, to use that. And then, designing some of my own PDFs for rule of thirds and not rule of thirds, rule of thirds, but also for exposure triangle and some of those things. They're not that difficult to design, but they need to be mine. So I need to go through all that. Now, as I went through all that, and I gave some tips on what kind of clothes you don't want to wear and do wear at a photo shoot. That was one of the questions they had. What was the other one? Oh, taking photos in front of a Christmas tree, which is a challenging thing to do,
especially if the lights are on. I mean, I know I try to do that every year for our or just about every year for our Christmas card, and you got to get that exposure exactly right if you want to see any lights on the tree. And you can't take the flash directly at the tree because it'll just blow them all out. So that it's more challenging than you actually. I mean, you see all these pictures and everything, and like, wow, that's beautiful. I'm going to try that, and then you try to do it. It's like, what happened?
Yeah, I know. It's challenging, and I had to do a lot of research and look some stuff up. And there's some good articles out there, but a lot of this stuff I want to redo myself, so it's all mine. I own the copyright on all of it, and I can share it as we start thinking about doing a show that is JPEG to RAW beginners series or something like that. So at the end of the thing, as I answer the final question and we say, all right, it's time to get back to work. People are getting up and they're getting ready to leave. I go, hold on. Oh, step back 1 second. My storyline's messed up. So I have never shot tethered. And if you don't know what tethered is, it's where you've connected your camera to a computer. And then the images when you shoot, they pop up on the computer. So I had a extra long USB cable connected to a USB cable that was connected to my camera, and then the other side of that was connected to a laptop, and then the laptop was connected to a 70-inch TV.
Right.
So as I take photos, they would pop up on there, and I was using Lightroom as a software, and Lightroom has a nice, easy little thing that just where's it at? Under edit, file, under file, tethered capture, and then start tethered capture. And then you just plug it in. And there's a little box that pulls up. You can hide that box. It doesn't come up over stuff. So I did that thinking I need to test this, make sure it works before I go down there, get everything ready. It was super simple. You just plug your camera into the computer, turn on that tethering in Lightroom, and bam, it's working. It's really easy. So at the end, as everybody's walking out, I said, hold on, I got one more thing to show you guys. And I took my camera, which was my Nikon D700 with a 50 millimeter 1.8 attached. And I said, watch this. And I put a pencil right up against the lens. So lens is here, pencil right there.
Right.
And I had to set it a little bit to the side so my camera wouldn't focus on it. And I said, now watch this. And I took a photo, and we looked up at the 70-inch screen. Pencil
And
is
it
gone.
wasn't there.
Pencil
Right.
is gone, and there's no like line through it. The shot looks normal. All the stuff is there, and everybody was like, how did you do that? Where'd the pencil go?
That wasn't the exact picture. That's a different picture.
No, I did it live. They're in the background. They're the ones.
Oh, all right. I was gonna say, put us in the background.
Yeah, no, I'm taking pictures of them, and the pencil's gone. I go, what happened there? I said, well, remember our little talk earlier about depth of field? I just blurred that out because the camera just blurred it completely out. Now, what is the practical use of that? Because you're not going to walk around with a pencil in front of your lens. I said, where I have used this before in the past is where I had like a 70 to 200. You got to have.
That's exactly what I did this weekend. I think you're going there.
It's 70 to 200. You got to have a really wide open aperture here, 72 at 2.8. You put it up against the chain link fence or close to it, and you shoot through that, and the chain link fence goes away, like at a baseball game or something like that, or at the zoo or somewhere like that.
I did that this weekend. We were into a park, and there was a swan between the brush out in the water, good maybe 30 feet away, 40 feet away. And I took the 7200, zoomed in all the way on it, f2.8, took a picture, and just about everything is gone from it except for this. You see a little bit of it, which is actually good. I almost wanted it there, but it almost completely blurred it out, and you wouldn't have expected you could see anything from it. So I was very impressed. I mean, I had to manually focus, so it didn't focus on something else, but that was fine. It worked well.
And that's a great visual that left them all like with, I don't know how he just did that. But before I had a visual that had like a bunch of tape measures lined up against each other, and it had f2.8, f5.6, f8, some of those things. And you could see that the area and focus on the tape measure got, from a small amount to bigger. And so that was kind of a visual to see what depth of field means. It was a fun time. I enjoyed talking to them. Maybe it's the podcast that helped me out with the timing because I finished almost right on the hour. And I know, here I often am watching the clock and trying to gauge us to get to the hour. And so I guess I was able to just naturally draw on that somehow. But I got to the hour pretty, right on time. One thing I did have some joke photos in there with my son who made some stupid faces. So a lot of the photos were mine. But one of the things I tried that didn't go over quite as good as I thought in practice was, when looking at, I did a real brief of the histogram. And I said, way over here you have, on the left side is complete darkness. On the right side is complete, white. So complete black, complete white. And in between is 50 shades of gray. And I did a pause, and there was no laughter.
50 Shades of Grey, and nobody helped you with it.
50 Shades of Grey, right?
Yeah.
So nobody helped me. I said, well,
helped.
it's actually quite a bit more than 50 Shades of Grey, but, all right, next subject. But where my wife is now going to be a little upset is that it went over really good. People really enjoyed it, and now people are coming and asking me about it. So what we're thinking about doing is starting up maybe later this month or next month, a weekly after work series. So on Thursday,
all you have to do is say, you know what, my son isn't in swimming anymore. I don't get to do that. So this is the same amount of time that was before.
From 5 to 6 on, I think it's Thursdays, is what we're scheduling. So 5 to 6. And, what I could do there is then I could say, all right, this Thursday, we're going to do nothing but talk about cell phone photography and help people out with that. This Thursday, we're going to talk nothing about composition. The other beautiful thing for me, Tim, is that, we have all these wonderful guests that come on the show who are so much more advanced than me and know so much more, both from the photography side and from the editing side, that there's not a whole lot I generally can offer that they don't know.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm usually just along for the ride. But with these folks, I know a lot and can help them out, these beginners like that. And that is fun to help those people out.
Well, like I said, I used to consider myself an advanced amateur. Now, after this show, man, I've taken quite a few steps backwards.
I know, I'm right there with you. It's crazy that you see some of these people, and some have only been in it for 3 or 4 years.
Well, and that makes me even more sad because I've been taking pictures probably I got to be over 20 years that when I first got my first film at least 20 years, maybe even longer when I got my first film camera. And I've never went headlong into it like a lot of the guests we have and start up businesses and everything. But they talk, yeah, I only started taking pictures 3 years ago and now I have a full blown business. I'm like, what? I feel so bad. I mean, yeah, all right. I work long days. I have a long job, but a lot of these people do too. So that's not even an excuse.
Yeah, I think maybe part of it, one is I don't have the skill, but
Right.
But two,
Well,
is,
I know I don't have the creativity side of it. That's for certain.
I don't have that, and I don't have the desire to turn this into a business.
No, it's fun. It's family pictures I take. That's exactly what it is for me.
Just like this podcast, I've been approached by 3 different people who want to advertise on the show. One of them is a big name that people would know. And I said, no, I don't know how they would think about the last 2 weeks we took off, but I don't want to have to answer to somebody else.
Right.
I answer to you and to our listeners and not to some other party who's saying, I gave you money to do this. That I don't need another boss.
Exactly. Either do I.
Yeah. So we do this for fun and a little bit of money we make that we can give back to people who listen is fine. Speaking of that, don't forget to use the Amazon affiliate link, which is jpegtheraw.com/Amazon. So, all right. So that's what I did last week. And what I hope will pick up into a little photography club. Ron McCarthy, we had on a while back. Is that who it was?
Yes, Ron McCarthy.
He has a photo club out in Texas.
Yes.
I had mentioned to him, hey, it looks like I maybe have a quasi photo club. We'll see what happens there. But while I was away, while I was at the office, I was at this business trip. I'm in a meeting and I get a text, I think from Nikki, or a Facebook message from Nikki that Lightroom has been released. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Right. And there was like no real warning about it.
Yeah. No beta, no anything. I think the day before actually, Nikki had texted me and said, it looks like Lightroom may be released tomorrow. And then, of course, I looked it up and said, yeah, it looks like you're right. I see the article you're reading. So I did a little bit of post on our Facebook page. And then, of course, the next morning I'm in the meeting and I'm checking. Oh, there it is. Lightroom's out. But I can't do anything with it because I'm stuck at this meeting and I got to wait till I get home.
That's of course how it goes.
Yeah. Did you download it right away?
I think, well, as soon as I saw it. So I've downloaded this past week. So probably earlier or maybe even last weekend I already downloaded it. So must have been right after it came out. Maybe I even saw something come across on my phone. I was like, oh. So I came home and I downloaded it and on both my laptop and yeah, that's what it was. I was up in Connecticut and I downloaded it to my laptop and then I came home and I downloaded it to my main PC. And I've been using it like we discussed before the show. Just I noticed a slight lag or delay now because I convert all my raw images to DNG, the Adobe format, digital negative, and I noticed that it takes longer to process it. And I'm hoping I don't know what it is. I may try and put it onto a different drive to see what happens.
When you say process, you mean during the import process?
During the import process.
So at that point, it's converting it from a RAW over to a DNG?
To a G. And I never noticed a major lag. I mean, it always took its time to download the pictures, but I got a pretty fast computer now. I mean, I just rebuilt it in the past year. So I don't think it's the computer, but and I don't recall Lightroom 5 having that issue. So I have to do some research on that. Now there was already an update that came out today. The Adobe updated Lightroom today, so maybe that hopefully that addressed. I don't know what that update was about.
Yeah, I think it might have had something to do with some of the GPU acceleration. And there was a good article written from a guy from Adobe who I think was part of that team. And if I can find it again, I'll put it in the show notes, where he talked about what they've done with GPU acceleration and the fact that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is as far as we can get with this release, but more is coming soon. And they didn't define soon, but more is coming soon.
Well, you say that, and my computer, I don't have a dedicated GPU in here.
Right.
I've never needed one. And matter of fact, I had wrote in a question to This Week in Computer Hardware like 2 or 3 years ago. And I asked them, I said, for Lightroom or even Photoshop, do I need it? And they said, no, in reality, and they're big on video cards. I mean, they always talk about a new video card's been released. And they said, if that's what you do, you don't do gaming, you don't need one.
Well, now Photoshop has been able to use the GPU for a while.
Yeah, but I don't use Photoshop that much. Maybe 2% of the time I'm in Photoshop.
Yeah, and the thing you got to know is it doesn't use it like Photoshop and Lightroom doesn't use the GPU for everything. It's only for
Right.
select things. I think back a couple of versions ago, at least in Photoshop, the Liquify tool used the GPU, and it was a huge speed increase that they gave there on the Liquify tool. And there's a few other things I think. I don't know the whole list. And then Lightroom really is only the develop module that uses that. And I don't know if it's 100% of the develop module or not, but only the develop module. So
Well, I spent a lot of time in there, so
right. So, but when you were downloading,
yeah, I'm
that
not.
wasn't using
That's
GPU.
that's in the library. Yeah, okay.
I also think that if you don't have a dedicated GPU, if you have one on built into the motherboard, you may want to turn off GPU acceleration and see what that does.
Well, that's what I got to do. I mean, I don't know if let's say a lot of the settings were changed maybe when I downloaded Lightroom CC versus what I had, and maybe that's what I have to go through. And that's part of the reason I bought Classroom in a book, to kind of go through it again. A lot of the things that I don't normally go through, to kind of say, all right, what needs to change? But I was surprised. I definitely noticed a lag. And then after it downloaded, and it was probably about 250 pictures I downloaded from the soccer game. About 20 minutes later, after I got up, came back, it said it just converted for all photos to DNG. I was like, oh, is that what that because it shows the process in the top left, and it actually had 2 bars, which surprised me.
So it was doing two things.
It was doing 2 things at the same time.
One of what the
And it doesn't tell you what it's doing. That I wish it would tell me what it's doing. It just says 2 processes are being completed. Now, is one the download and one is converting? That might be what it's doing, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell me.
Huh. I don't know if there's a way for you. If you put your mouse over the top of it, it won't say anything.
No, it didn't say anything.
Okay. Well, for me, I don't convert to DNG, so I don't have an example. I don't know what it would do on my system. I do have a dedicated GPU. I have AMD or ATI, whatever it is, Radeon 7850. It's not top of line today. It's maybe 2 generations old, but it's still a fast card. I mean, I use it for the production of this show here, and it's it does pretty good. And I have noticed a significant increase in the develop module, moving between photos, doing some edits on there. It's much faster for me. So the only thing that's changed for me is I've gone from Lightroom 5 to Lightroom 6 or Lightroom CC. And I've noticed a big speed improvement there. For me, the problem was when I went to download and install it, it never would. It would get like 43% and then fail. I would not do it. Huh. At the same time, if you guys remember when we were going live with the last show with Abe Robinson, I talked about, I think in a pre-show, but maybe during the show, I can't remember, that I had 2 hard drives in my system that were going bad at the same time. And if anybody starts putting 2 and 2 together and say, Mike, over the course of the show, you've lost like 4 or 5 drives. What's going on? I have
400 or 500 drives.
I have probably over 60 hard drives in the house that are being used. They're actively being used, not sitting on the sideline. So yeah, I lose 1 or 2 or so a year hard drives. That's why backup is so important. But in this time I had 2 who were going bad at the same time. And I'm not sure if they were causing some of the problem with Lightroom, whatever. But what I ended up having to do is I had to completely uninstall all of the Adobe products, and including the Adobe Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Lightroom, After Effects, everything.
Wow.
And then reinstall everything. And when I did that, it all worked. Of course, now it's going to be interesting for the production of this show. And Adobe Audition, which is their audio editing software, right. I had a lot of favorites and presets and stuff that I've worked a long time developing just how I wanted. They're all gone. I got to figure out how to get them back. I haven't checked my Lightroom presets. They may be gone too.
But yeah, and that's what I'm wondering. Maybe that's what happened to me. So I got to look, and I'll go through the training book, and it's probably about 25 hours worth of it. But there's a lot that I don't use in Lightroom that I want to know how to use, and there's probably quicker ways than what I'm doing. So
a few of the things, and there's a good place, the Lightroom Queen, which let's see if I can find her site. Here we go.
LightroomQueen.com.
LightroomQueen.com. She has a What's New in Lightroom CC or Lightroom 6 article here, and we're trying to get her to come on the show at some point in the next little bit to give us a more in-depth Lightroom review. This is not meant to be a Lightroom review here that we're talking about. But she runs down some of the new stuff. So if you're wondering what is new in Lightroom, facial recognition, that is brand new to Lightroom. Mm-hmm. I have tried that out, and I had it up just a minute ago for people who were watching, and I'll pull it back up. Well, sort of. And to the wrong screen. There we go. So it's, now when you're in the library module and you hit O, it takes you to the people tab, and it tries to find people, and then you give it names. Now here's where I've had a problem. If you see right now, I've got 2 rows of people that I've named.
Right.
And the first guy is really green. The white balance is off in that shot for whatever reason. But I have 2 rows of people that not quite. There's one image missing on the last row. I have 3 different times done this and got 3 rows of people. So I've named enough people to fill 3 rows and almost completely filled the 3rd row. And then for whatever reason, I will lose everything except for the top row. So there's this one guy that I have highlighted here that he's not the main subject, but this guy here that I'm going to name here. What is his name? I don't even remember his name. Let's just make up a name. Jack. I'm going to give him a name of Jack. I have named this dude about 5 times to get him up in people, and he keeps getting lost. And I don't know what is going on with that. Why do I keep losing these people? Why do I have to keep renaming them over and over again?
Yeah, that's odd.
And then it's really easy. So this guy is Jack. That's Jack too. I can just drag him up there, and now I got him on top of there. So it's really nice if I wouldn't keep losing them. I'm looking now I had a person named Kristen up here. Gone. Completely gone. She's not there. So I'm going to try it again. Oh, and by the way, I would not, like in my album here, this catalog, I have over 300,000 images in it. I would not have it do facial recognition on the main catalog. I started off with...
Unless you're going to leave it. I do folder at a time.
I did a folder at a time.
Yeah, that's how you got to do it.
What I did is I did a year. I started with a smaller year. Like I think I started with 2015 because it only had a few thousand images. No, it only has 670. That's sad. Only 670 photos so far this year. That's pretty sad. And its catalog. Anyway, so I started on a smaller one.
That's all you have this year? Now I'm looking to see what I have. At least I got 2,800. I don't feel too bad. Yeah. I know I definitely take a lot less in the January through April. A lot less than any other time of the year.
Gary out in chat says he doesn't think he has any use for the facial thingy. In a lot of cases, I probably won't either. Because let's say I'm going to shoot the girl I have here, Danny Moore. I went and shot her basketball game there. Yeah, I don't need facial recognition for that one because I'm only there to shoot Danny. And the entire shoot went into a folder called Danny or whatever I named it. So I know that. Where it's going to be interesting to use in some of my older years where maybe I have not tagged them as well, and I want looking for all the shots of my kids. And so that may be helpful. And of course, the older years, I'm not going to remember all his teammates. It'd have been nice to maybe have it back then. So let's say you're shooting back then when I was shooting their t-ball or their football or their soccer or whatever I was shooting or swimming, I couldn't always remember all the kids' names. It was like at the end of the season, I finally got to know all the kids' names, in looking at their photos. So what would have been helpful is if I had an easier way to keep track of how many shots of Tim have I got this season. And instead of being at the last swim meet and realizing I've only got 3 shots of Tim and 150 of Jack, I better focus on Tim this game. And that would have been nice to know as the season went on, and I could have spread that out. And facial recognition may be helpful to, at least even if I don't know their names, put them into buckets because I can see this person doesn't look like this person. Tim doesn't look like Jack. Your son's named Jack, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Tim doesn't, Tim doesn't look like Jack, but I can put them there, and then later when I figure out their names, I know that. So that's one way for me that facial recognition would have been good to organize them and like that, and find where I'm lacking and try and make that up during the season. What do you think of that?
I think that's actually a smart move because I know I actually this past year I didn't take as many pictures as a soccer team, probably because I was so frustrated with the results we were getting. But we've won out of our first 5 games, and I started taking pictures again. And I know I had that exact same problem where I would always focus in on probably the same kids, and half the time maybe it was the midfielder because they were closer to me than somewhere else. And it's hard being one of the assistant coaches on the team to get that, or taking pictures of Jack. Then it comes to the end of the season, I'm like. And I try to make a disc for other people, like, oh my God, I only have 2 shots of this kid for the whole season. And that's not good.
No, when you're at the team party and you're doing a slideshow, because I did this a number of years in a row, you got a slideshow playing on the screen, and all the kids are sitting there looking at it as they're waiting as they're eating their dinner, and afterwards are going to be trophies, and only one of that one kid comes up. It's like, oh boy, that's horrible.
Yeah, and they notice it, and then
Oh,
you hear
absolutely.
it. So
And
yeah, and you're right. That I didn't think of it. That might be a great way to capture that. And right now, because I tag every picture when I upload it into Lightroom, I tag each player right away, so I have it. And sometimes it's a back picture of them, especially if they're running away. But you know who it is. But I know when I did try to print pictures off at the end of the season a year or 2 ago, I was like, oh man, it was hard finding some kids.
well, and I don't know how you did it, but what I did is that as it got toward the end of the season, is then I made subfolders underneath that was Jack, Tim, Mike, so on, and I would copy their photos into that, and then I would go through and say, all right, what's my selects within those? Let me try and find 10 of each player or whatever number I needed, and that was trouble. But at the beginning of the season, I couldn't do that because I didn't know Tim's name,
Right.
you know. So
Player number 26.
yeah, and I can't always see your jersey number, but that would have helped me back then. Now I'm not going to remember all those players, and I could care less. I'm more, hey, let me find all the ones that had my son in it and that kind of stuff. So I see some limited use if you're a landscape photographer or something like that. Facial recognition doesn't mean anything. So there's some limited use there. It's one of those things that I don't have to use it, but it's nice to have it there when I need it. The other thing you mentioned about tagging them when you import them, the other thing it allows you to do now is to put them in a category during the import process. You couldn't do that before.
What do you mean?
So when you were importing before, let me see if I can pull this up. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. But when you were importing it before, you come over here and you can give it the shot a name. You can tell it which folder to go to. You can even put keywords on it and everything, but you couldn't add it to a collection.
I thought because let's say if I had I thought it would fall in the smart collection. So let's say I had pictures of because I keep throughout the year pictures of my friends' kids. And maybe I didn't, maybe it didn't work that way because I would always put, let's say on a soccer game, I would put soccer ball, soccer field, Bethpage, PAL, Long Island Junior Soccer League, team sports, team, whatever. And then I would actually go into it after that to put the kids' names, and then it would drop them into a subfold, a smart collection. So yeah, you're right. I guess I never did it that way because I couldn't put, not one kid was in every picture.
Now, I use smart collections like you do. So I have smart collections set up for a wide range of things. And you're right, if you have smart collections set up, like let's say you said soccer, if you have a smart collection set up for sports and then underneath that is soccer, then every photo that you tag, depending on how you set up the smart collection, every photo you tag with soccer, the word soccer, boom,
into that
sucked
collection.
into that thing. But those are smart collections. Let's say you have a collection set up that's not a smart collection, that is something else, some other kind of collection that you want to send these photos to, you could do that now during the import process.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah, because I'm not sure how I would use that for my workflow because I usually use folders and smart collections. But there may be some times when you want to use it. Here's how I do it. So let's say that Danny Moore basketball game. I may have sports, then underneath that I have basketball, and then underneath that I have Danny, and then I have two folders. One is called Full Shoot, got all the images in it, and one is called Selects. And Selects is a smart collection, and it's going to pick up all the ones with flags in it.
Okay.
Well, I can, during the import process, shoot them all into the Full Shoot folder. Now, you could say, why don't you use a smart collection there? I tried at one point, and I had some issue. I can't remember what it was. For whatever reason, it wasn't picking those things up. Maybe I didn't do it right. But I made that thing not be a smart collection.
Okay.
And those. So that's where I would use it when I was importing it. Not a big thing, but, and it's there.
I mean, it almost looks like they're making Lightroom more for the consumer versus the professional. I don't see a professional using the facial recognition, the HDR so much. I think you're going to use some other process for HDR than that. So that's my concern.
So that's the other things I've added is HDR and panorama, and I have tried both of them.
Did they not have panorama before? Or is that just? I
don't think they did. No,
that was Photoshop that I did that in.
Yeah, so I'm not really overly impressed with the HDR. It's going to come across. It's okay. It's not going to be the HDR like a Photomatics.
Right.
So if you're a big Photomatics user, this is not going to stop you from wanting to use that. You're still going to want to use Photomatics. I'm still going to use Photomatics. And I can't even say like the Lightroom process is like blazing fast, and therefore it saves you a ton of time, because it's not. I don't know how much the GPU is doing, if anything, there. So for me, it's of limited use. The HDRs of limited.
Well, I'm just reading articles here, and there are a lot of people saying that the import process has been slowed down, and converting to DNG is slowed down. So I'm not the only person that has noticed it. To convert to DNG has become ridiculously slow. I've resorted to using Adobe DNG conversion utility. So there's people out there complaining about it right now. That's 11 hours ago.
Yeah. So to me, this is not a. I don't know if this is worth a 6.0 release. I guess they were at the end of 5, so they had to do it. And maybe they're thinking that.
Right, what were they at 5.7? I think was the last one.
Maybe they're thinking, okay, facial recognition, that's big, and I guess the introduction of GPU to this.
That would be big. That might require a big rewrite of the software.
So it would. That is a reason to make it a 6.0, I guess. And we got to remember that. This is stage 1, level 1, or whatever you want to call it,
right? Of
what they're going to do eventually with GPU there. They've only done it to the develop module, and then again, I don't know if it's the full develop module. In my case, have noticed a big speed improvement. The other thing is they did not do a public wide beta for this. And it's either that they were under a time constraint and didn't want to have to deal with that, felt they got enough information during their private beta, or felt that for whatever reason they just didn't need one, and that they had gained enough experience using GPU through Photoshop and their other products. To me, I think, when you start touching in the GPU, there's such a potential there for good, but also such a potential for incompatibilities across a wide range of people, that a public beta might have been a good thing to do.
Yeah, you didn't see one, and I don't know if this is because it's the Creative Cloud now, and the way they were going to put it out there, even though you could still get it as a standalone product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
For you, without a discrete or a separate video card, it would be interesting if you're going to stay that way.
No, I'm probably gonna get one now. Okay. Now I have a reason to buy one.
Yeah. So I'm noticing speed improvement. I would love to see them to do more like the library module for maybe the conversion like you're having at the beginning of the
right. That's where I'd like to have the speed.
You wish you had something there during an import process. They were saying that a lot of what they're saying is, hey, we needed to do this GPU acceleration because you have these high resolution monitors. Heck, I got a 27-inch and it's a okay resolution monitor. It's not like a 4K display. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's I need to look at that. But that was part of the reason it needed to be speed up. Lightroom 5 was slow.
Right.
And I hope that they move quickly on improving the speed in other areas with this import process being probably the next thing they need to hit, then maybe the library module. I don't use a whole lot of the other modules.
No, I can't say that I use. I mean, what are the other modules
The
in there?
map one is
The map
is kind of neat.
It's neat. My camera has a GPS in it, and so I liked it. Sadly, my next camera will not have it. Am I going to miss it? Probably not, to be honest. Book, I probably never used. Slideshow, I've been into a couple of times. Print, I've been in a whole lot of times to print. Web, I think they just clicked in it now for the first time.
Yeah, I have no need for the web one. I have no need for that one. I have done all the others, and I actually tried to make a book. I was in the process of making a book. It was fine. It was me. I stopped developing. I need to finish that, making a book of our last cruise. So, but I hope that they move to the import process and then over to the library. Because even if you're not converting to DNG, you got to create those smart previews and all those kind of things. And that seems like something that the GPU could just fly through.
You would think, and that's exactly what it would be great for.
And then your bottleneck is right into the hard drive.
But my collection's on an no, maybe it's on a black drive. It's probably on a black. I don't think I have that on an SSD.
It's on an SSD.
Yeah, I probably should have my current year on an SSD and then move that off.
I should say the photos are not. The library.
Well, yeah, no, the library's on an SSD. There's no doubt about that. But my photos are on a black drive. But you know what? The other thing I would like to see, I mean, obviously I have a Windows Home server. I would like to have it where you could have this up on the Lightroom catalog up on your network, so I can go between my laptop and my home computer and do it. That can't. I mean, I know they're saying there's technical difficulties on it. I can't imagine it's that bad. I mean, lock it out so that if somebody's in it, it can't be used. Simple.
Right.
I mean, that I would really like to see. Have it so I can access it between the two. Right now, I can't do that, and that's painful.
That catalog, basically, the inside has to be a database, right?
Yeah.
And it seems, databases are not something that Lightroom invented. It's been around for a while, and they've been perfected. And as we all know, two people could be in the same database at the same time. Thousands of people could be in the same database at the same time.
Exactly.
So the only thing we'd have to do is make sure we're not maybe updating the same record at the same time. So what that would mean is, why can't you have a server-based Lightroom catalog, our central base, whatever you want to say, and then have multiple people coming into that one catalog, and as long as we're not pulling up the same image, we're fine. Who cares? And if I do try and pull up the same image Tim's looking at, it just says I'm in read-only mode or something like that for that image.
Right.
That's either
I would love to see that, and I'm sure there's other people. I mean, I can't imagine we're the only people that are into that.
It seems like you wouldn't be. But, I also, in my day job, had contacted Microsoft several times, and I'm probably on a kind of watch list about
do not answer list.
about Microsoft Excel and some ideas I had that they need to improve on there. And, of course, by the time I sent them the third letter, it was, not the same tone as the first one. I would never threaten them. I didn't do that.
So to tell us the truth, you got a cease and desist letter.
No, but okay, just for a second, I'll come off on here on the tangent. Have you ever used spreadsheets and it's got the tabs at the bottom?
Absolutely.
I said, look, you guys have invented tabs. Actually, you stole it from Quattro Pro back in the 80s. Tabs at the bottom, and there's not been any advancement in tabs in 30 years, 20 years. Nothing.
They're the same from what I've ever recalled.
What we need is tabs.
You could change colors.
Yeah, that happened 20 years ago. What we need is tabs at the top that are summary tabs, and each one of those tabs at the top has a full set of tabs at the bottom. So, for instance, if you're working on a spreadsheet that you've got raw data, you've got pivot table data, you've got finished reports, and maybe you've got 15 tabs for each one of those sections. You can have tabs at the top. That is the summary tab. When you click on that, boom, here's all my raw data tabs. Boom, here's all my pivot table tabs. And it's all still one spreadsheet, but it's a way to organize your tabs into more reasonable numbers.
Yeah, I have some very big files at work, and I resorted to color coding them so that it's different things, and that's the only way.
You all do that, but what happens when you have so many tabs that goes off the screen, And you gotta
I'm not that advanced.
space. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. I probably my biggest files probably got about 45, 50 tabs in it, I guess.
Well, that would be definitely off the screen. So
It's definitely off the screen. It's probably it pages over about 4 or 5 times. But I know I created the file, so I know everything that's in it. So.
But it would be so much nicer to have summary tabs.
Yes, it would be, and that you could get to it. Yes.
So as to wrap this up, at the last home server show meetup that I went to, there's another tech podcast that Tim and I are involved in. I went to that thing, and there was a Microsoft MVP there who was on the Excel team, and I pitched him
cornered him.
Yes, and he said, "Yeah, I don't think anybody else is asking for that." So it was dead. So that may be where did this all start from? It came back from. We started with something that heavily,
the modules inside Lightroom. I think that's what we were on. Is that how we got to that?
Don't know now. What were we? If Gary remembers, he can tell us.
I think we put Gary to sleep.
Anyway, that needs to be the end of my Excel story. So to wrap this up, because believe it or not, we're almost coming up on the hour. Crazy. To wrap this up, I had two
for a night where we had nothing to talk about.
I have two stories. One is your beloved Sony, and I'm going to pull that up now. Sony, as a lot of us knew, Sony makes the sensors for a lot of Nikon cameras. But this article came out that says Sony makes an estimated 40+% of all sensors. And you can't stack the tabs there, Gary. There's no stacking of tabs in Excel. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's talking about Windows, I think.
Okay.
You can stack tabs.
But Sony makes 40% of all the sensors that goes into all cameras. That means cell phone cameras. That means DSLRs, point and shoots, all that kind of stuff. They make it the sensor that goes inside the iPhone 6. They make the sensor that goes into a lot of the Nikon cameras, and it's been extremely successful for them. To the point, where they're starting to actually affect some of their camera sales. That, if you're making a sensor for Nikon, and Nikon has this wonderful sensor camera, well, that where's the advantage in Sony? They had to kind of something else. So the camera business, according to this article, is not in danger right now. They are thinking about selling off their cell phone business, which I didn't even know there was a Sony cell phone, maybe overseas.
I think it's overseas. Yeah. I mean, I hear about it, but I've never seen one here in the States, but I have heard of their phones.
Which is interesting, as we talk about Nikon, Canon, and we also said, and then there's Tim with Sony. Just keep in mind that a lot of the stuff you use may be using that Sony sensor, so using a Sony DSLR may not be that much of a stretch. You may already be using one. You didn't even know it.
Don't even know it.
And then the last article I had, and that was over on DP Review. I'll have the link there. Here's another one on DP Review where they're talking about noise, and we all know noise comes from high ISO and that kind of stuff. It's a 2-part article, and the article gets a little complex. I'm not going to try and talk about it all here, but basically the analogy they use is that the light coming into your sensor. Oh, first off, they're saying that noise is not just from the turning up the ISO. Some of the noise comes from the shutter speed and the aperture, and they're not talking about physical noise like a ding or something or the flapping of the shutter. They're talking about the noise that shows up on your image. And what they said is, use this as an example. Take some cups, 3 or 4 cups, cover them with something, and out in the rain, and then take off the cover, put it back on really fast, and you look in those cups, and these have to be like almost like beakers or test tubes or something smaller. Inside those cups, some of them will have 1 drop of rain, some of them have 3 drops of rain, some of them may have 0 drops of rain. And there, what they're saying is, with a fast shutter speed, is there's some sections of your image that the light is not completely hitting everywhere. So you're out in the middle of, in this rain example, you're in the pouring rain and thinking it is every inch is just covered in rain. But in that example where you remove the thing and then put it back on, the top on top of the test tubes and put it back on, so it's only off for a split second. Some of those test tubes are going to have no rain in it, even though you thought it was completely saturated. And that's what they're saying is happening on your image sensor, is that light is not hitting every pixel on that thing, and that is generating some noise. And that's why you hear a lot of times.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, it was. It's not mine. It's from their article. But that's what they're saying, that everybody says always exposed to the right, exposed to for the brightness. Don't blow it out, but exposed to the right. That gives you a little more chance to get those dark areas of the image hit with some light, and then in post processing you fix that. But that's what
Right,
it
but
is.
you can't. But the most important thing is not to overexpose, because my understanding is if you overexpose, it's gone. You're
It
never
is.
getting anything back.
It is, but remember that the image you're seeing on the back of the camera is a JPEG representation. So
Right.
if you're shooting raw, you generally have a little bit extra room there. But when they say exposed to the right, don't blow it out, because once it goes completely white, it's gone.
Yeah.
On the JPEG, you may have a little more room on
The raw-
with
raw
the
you mean.
raw, but you don't want to go too far with that. So, but that's what that article's saying. I'll have the link there. It shows you some more examples and talks about that. It's a two-part article. This first part is noise that is generated by the aperture and shutter, and then the second part is talking about noise generated by the ISO. It's something that a lot of us don't think about, and that analogy they use is really good about the having the cover on top of the test tubes.
Right.
And the second example they said is, instead of leaving it off for a split second, leave it off for about 5 seconds and then put it back on. Now, most of the test tubes are going to have, let's say they're almost completely full. But if you were able to count drops of water in that, one may have had 480 drops of water, and another one had 500 drops of water. So if you look at that, that's a 20 drop of water difference, where when you only had it off for a split second, there may have been only a 1 or 2 drop of water difference. But at some point, when you get enough light hitting it, it really becomes irrelevant. Is 480 really that much of a difference between 500? It's at that point is a mute point. You hit it with enough light.
Right. Right.
Yeah, not bad for that article there. That's really all I had for this week, Tim.
Well, speaking of the Sony, I just noticed that my camera is $200 on sale. Instant savings.
It's only $200.
No, it's 200 less. It's still 1,500. It was 17. Now it's 15.
Okay.
But that's 200 more in the good guy's pocket.
So, during this whole show, we've had down at the bottom the JPEG to RAW logo. We have the jpeg-raw.com. So I made a few little changes there to that. The logo is still being developed. A nice guy from somewhere in Europe. I can't remember the name, where he's at in Europe.
Was it Belarus or something? No, not Belarus.
But we're working on a few tweaks. One of them being the little line it comes for the 2.
Mm-hmm.
Looks a little bit like a devil's tail, so we're going to do a little bit there. The G in JPEG looks a little bit like a 6, so we're going to try and tweak that. And then I also need a version of this that's all in one row. So I want to thank him again. Let's see if I can find his name. Where is his name? We actually had a Skype conversation. What?
You forgot who it is already?
Mirjan Merjan Kubrick.
Right. I know we
Merjan
talked his
Kubrick.
name last time. God forbid, I forgot it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank him for all the work he's done on that. Looks good so far, and it's only going to get better from there. And this month, we are doing the photo contest in the JPEG to RAW group. Tim, I think both of us have voted for the April image, which back in April was a open contest. It's an open contest again for March or for May. Open meaning no theme, just your best shot for the month. If you're not in a Facebook group, we'd love to have you out there. Come out there, join the Facebook group, enter the contest. If you don't want to join the group, but you still like to enter, then we have a link on our webpage where you can go and upload your image there. Every month we get about 1 or 2 that do it that way. The easiest way is through the Facebook group. We also have a weekly, bi-weekly, every other week, photo editing challenge inside the group. That one, you can go and download it from our forums. Well, you haven't been in the forums lately, but over in the forums, you just go over to jpeg-raw.com, hit forums, and then over there you can go and download the image. Go into downloads. Here, I'll just walk you through it. Editing challenge. Then there are all the editing challenges that we've done. The most recent at the top. You just click on that, and then you can come in here and download the image and join in the editing contest. This one is actually now entries are closed. It's being voted on now, and we'll start a new one this Sunday. Every other Sunday we start a new one. So if you want to get in on editing challenge, come on and do that. And if not, join the photo contest. It's a fun way to learn. What else we have here? Yes, if you are going to buy from Amazon, don't forget to use the jpegtoraw.com/Amazon link. The show gets a small credit. It doesn't cost you anything extra. And then we use those funds for our photo contest, for our giveaways, all those kind of things. We also have an affiliate with Topaz Labs. So if you're going to buy their suite or any of their items from Topaz Labs, remember to use our link, which is jpegtoraw.com/Topaz Labs. I own the full collection. I think you do too, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
I haven't used it in a while, but it is great software, very intuitive.
I've got to redo it now that I had to delete all my Adobe products and put it back in there. I got to redo it. The forums, of course, at jpegtoraw.com/forums. And then lastly, our Facebook group, as we mentioned, facebook.com/groups/jpegtoraw. We'd love to have you out there. And I'm probably going to be starting a beginners group too to get people out there. Next week, I don't know what we're going to do next week. Our guest has had to move their show date away from next week. We had somebody great for next week. I need to email her as soon as we get done here with the rescheduling that. I really want to get her on. And we're working, as I mentioned before, to get the Lightroom Queen to come on. That may not be a standard night. That may be another night, or just any night she can come on, and that I'm available at least.
Yes.
And if you want to come, if you're able to come on, that'd be great, Tim. If not, you can watch it
any night other than Thursday works good for me. But if it has to be a Thursday, it has to be a Thursday.
Okay, I will see what I can do, because she's going to go a little bit more in depth, and will be there for us to ask questions, like why is importing my DNGs, the conversion DNG so slow. So until next show, keep it raw. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.